Have you ever wondered if your ADHD has been diagnosed thoroughly? Well, I always did, because when I got diagnosed with ADHD, you sat in a room, they put you in front of a computer, you answered a bunch of questionnaires, and then you went and saw the psychiatrist, and they said, yep, you got ADHD. I'm like, that's it? That's all? Like, nothing else? Like, here, take this medication. And I've always wondered, I'm like, there's gotta be way more to understanding why you have ADHD and not just filling out a questionnaire and visiting with the psychiatrist a couple times. Well, when I went to medical school, I thought I would learn more about this. And sure enough, it was the same process, just filling out questionnaires, assessing your patient and seeing, if they have these certain behaviors, but it was mainly still a questionnaire. And it wasn't until I was on a shift where it was specifically focused on people with ADHD, and the psychiatrist that was overseeing this shift was more of a holistic minded type of psychiatrist. And she really started to open my eyes as far as when it comes to really diagnosing someone with ADHD and more of the ins and outs of doing further extensive testing instead of just doing a questionnaire, which I learned through this process. But also on top of that, even with working with people with ADHD and going on my own, I've definitely learned that there's other ways that other doctors simply just don't do this type of diagnosis or testing. And I'm gonna go over 7 different tests that you should really be looking at as far as being diagnosed with ADHD, taking this a step further. So very first thing is you should be looking at micronutrient testing. Micronutrient testing can tell us a lot of information, especially with someone with ADHD, because people with ADHD tend to be more deficient in a lot of different micronutrients. So the first one that you should be looking at is antioxidant levels such as CoQ10, looking at vitamin C, vitamin E, and vitamin A, which are all very protectant for our brain, but also some things such as like vitamin C are very important for building neurotransmitters that are very essential for us people with ADHD. Second, you should be testing for all the B vitamins, because we tend to be very deficient with people with ADHD and are very necessary for building different neurotransmitters. So we're talking about B vitamin 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 12. And then also folate is also very important because that does play a big role when it comes to processing and building different B vitamins. The third thing that you should be looking at is different minerals. And one of the biggest ones, in fact, when I was on that rotation round with this psychiatrist, my very first patient that I had with ADHD, I still remember this patient. The mom came in with her son, and the boy was about 8 years old, and he was diagnosed with ADHD, but he wasn't your typical ADHD person. He was really tired, he was really pale, and just very lethargic, and he was getting in trouble in school because he was very tired and he wasn't paying attention. So I decided to run different minerals, and one of them being looking at iron. And sure enough, his iron levels were way off. He was very deficient in iron levels. And by just changing that simple thing within just a couple weeks, when this boy came back and the mom, she was super ecstatic because he was a totally different person. He wasn't lethargic, he wasn't tired, he was able to pay attention more. In a way, he was probably misdiagnosed when he really should have been looking at an iron deficiency, which could present as same symptoms. But some other types of minerals that should be tested is such as magnesium, zinc. Those are very 2 common things that we see in ADHD that are deficient, but also looking at like calcium and also selenium, which selenium is also important for thyroid, which goes into my 4th thing that you should be testing for is a thyroid panel. So when someone is having thyroid issues, it can present a lot with ADHD symptoms because they can be somewhat similar, such as brain fog, inattentiveness, fatigue, as well as mood swings and irritability. So it's important to test for thyroid, and I do this a lot with my patients because they present so similarly. And something you should be testing for is running your TSH, free T3, free T4, and also an anti-TPO levels to really rule out if you have a thyroid issue or not. And the 5th thing that you should be testing for is looking to see if there's a possibility that you have lead or mercury poisoning, because we can get this sometimes in food. Also, if you're in an environment, especially if you're next to a factory that you could have been exposed to, or living in an older house, especially as a child, maybe you got exposed to this, and it's good to just check this and rule this out, making sure that this isn't becoming a problem. And the 6th thing that I would say is it doesn't hurt to check to see if there's some allergy sensitivities going on, or if you have allergies to particular foods, because this can cause symptoms of brain fog, being inattentive, irritability, and also cause digestive issues. When you have digestive issues, that can cause problems of feeding the brain. So I think it's important to really rule this out as well. And then the 7th thing that I would say is testing for neurotransmitters. Now, this is a little bit harder. It's something that we do in my practice where we do test for neurotransmitters, but you won't find any standard doctors will run this. This is something kind of special. Only usually research facilities will run these testings, but you can run other tests such as like amino acids. So like testing even just L-tyrosine levels can be really helpful, or even testing for 5-HTP or phenylalanine levels that I've talked about in some of my other videos of how that does impact a lot of people with ADHD, where we see phenylalanine levels tend to be low. If you really liked this information, then you really will like the free guide that I have in the description below. It's a free ADHD guide that goes over the lab testing that I just talked about and some additional stuff to get you on your way to help you with your ADHD. Dr. LeGrand signing out. Thanks. Bye.